My name is Bella. Thank you so much for welcoming me in, Denard, as always. And welcome to so many of my lovely returning members, regular members, and brand new members. It's so great to see you guys, and I'm so thankful for you guys turning out and listening to me talk about a topic that I'm deeply, deeply passionate about, which is trauma. And I know that that sounds really weird, people in the professional sphere, whether you are a coach, a mental health professional, a medical professional, anything in that area, you're like, I say something, like, I love grief, I love trauma. And then they're just like, that's a weird thing to say. And I'm like, no, but it's true, those, because, what I'm really saying is that I'm comfortable sitting with grief. I'm comfortable sitting with trauma because I have spent a lifetime doing so. Whether it was my own grief and my own trauma, or deep seated intergenerational trauma, and looking at how trauma and suicide and addiction and severe mental health conditions affect the family system and affect the community and really a child's world as a whole. And something that I think is a unique take that I don't know many people know about me is that I had a very, very interesting childhood, to put it lightly. I heard, I've heard people talk about, oh, it was hard growing up, or I've listened to your story and it's difficult to listen to. But the reality is, for many of us who did experience childhood trauma, every day wasn't bad. It's not like I had physically abusive parents. I had moments of goodness and I had moments of pain, as we all do. But for me, rather than it's experiencing a lot of things directly from my parents, I experienced a lot of pain and loss on the outside. There was a lot of religious trauma that I had to unlearn as I stepped into an adult, and I really embraced the power of what spirituality has to offer. Um, I grew very intimately aware of what addiction does, and addiction on in all facets. But for me, my personal experience was methamphetamine, pills, and alcohol for members of my family. And again, well, how that, mental health conditions and addiction did tend to metabolize was in the loss of my godfather, my dad's best friend, um, relatives being lost from overdoses, and, mental health conditions like severe ADHD, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. And what I learned from all of that is that human beings are beautifully flawed creatures, myself included, and Denard included, and every single human being that we are here. We are beautifully flawed, and it is the choices that we make that define us, not the things that have happened to us. And referencing the conversation that me and Denard had following our last masterclass that he hosted me on, is that we talked about the beauty, and I shared my philosophy on the beauty of scarred individuals. And I think this will be a nice way to lead in to how we can heal from trauma, because many of us, when we do experience violence, aggression, verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, is that we carry around scars. Some of them are internal, some of them are external, invisible to everyone. And the individuals I've found who have the strength and the love for themselves to openly display their external scars or discuss their internal scars with others are the most beautiful people in the entire world to me. And that goes to whether you have healed from a violent car accident that left your body scarred, or you are a person who's given birth and you have those beautiful stretch marks to show the significance of that. Those scars are inherently beautiful because they show that you are still here, that you are still around and fighting despite whatever tried to hurt you or whatever pain that your body went through. And an anecdote that I like to share is something that I heard about tribal culture in Africa, specifically relating to women's stretch marks, is that they saw a woman come. She visited the village, and she was a Western woman. And they looked at her stomach, and she was, getting changed and all of that, taking their clothes off. And they said, "Oh, you haven't had children yet. Like, you haven't received that blessing yet in your life." And she said, "No, I have. I just, I got surgery. I got, I had these creams and I got these procedures, and it took away the stretch marks because I was really, insecure about them." And these beautiful women looked at her and they were like, "No, that is a mark on your body. That is a beautiful mark on your body." And we actually look for those marks whenever we are preparing people for burial because we know to honor them as parents and as mothers because of those scars. You are given extra consideration whenever we see those beautiful scars. If you hadn't told us and you had passed away, we wouldn't have known that, and we wouldn't have known to honor you as a mother and as a parent. And that's how I kind of like to look at that, is that whenever I see scars and whenever I hear people discussing their scars, I'm like, wow, they're showing us a way to honor their life experiences. They're showing us as a society that they are stronger than whatever tried to hurt them, whatever tried to beat them down into submission. They're still here. And there is a real beauty in that, a distinct beauty that comes from knowing light and darkness in the world. Because whenever we just know light, whenever we just know joy and happiness and unblemished skin, pristine skin, it's because we know they're beautiful because they are still innocent. The world hasn't hurt them just yet. But for the large majority of us, unfortunately, we aren't going to come out of the world and pass into the next one with that beautiful unblemished skin. It's one of my favorite quotes in the world, is that it's like, hey, it's life. None of us make it out alive. And it also reminds me of another quote that is something that I live my life by, I think, a little bit, not to be too woo-woo. But the quote is, "I have loved the stars too fondly to be fearful of the night." There is always light in the darkness. And whenever you know the darkness well, you can sit in it and you know the light is there. And that's how I feel about trauma. I know darkness well. I know trauma well. I know grief well. And the reason that I can sit and discuss it and have my heart open instead of closing it off and shutting off my emotions as I did whenever I was young is that I know it's so much better to cry and scream and love with my fellow human beings than try to shut off that part of ourselves. So much better, because whenever we shut off that part of ourselves, we shut off our capacity to connect with other human beings. We shut off that capacity to really love and be loved by others. And that does lead me in very nicely to my personal thoughts on how we can best heal from trauma. And in my opinion, the best way that we can heal from trauma is by taking a holistic approach. And you're probably thinking, like, holistic. You're like, oh, great, another granola mom stepping in. I'm like, no. So I'm going to give you how I particularly define holistic. So in my eyes, holistic healing is an approach that attempts to address wellness, overall wellness, from a physical, emotional, psychological, social, and spiritual standpoint. And what we're going to spend today kind of talking about is new and hopefully novel approaches to each of those categories. And again, I'll do my best to keep it succinct because there will be elements that we've already discussed in previous masterclasses, but then to make sure that I'm giving us plenty of time to ask those questions. So we'll go ahead and start off with physical healing. As we discussed in the last masterclass, which was the physical impact of trauma, we might have physical sensations like our heart rate elevating, having difficulty regulating our body temperature, digestive troubles, nervous system, autoimmune functions. It really messes with so many of our bodily symptoms. But one of those really essentially important ones is our digestive system. And healing your gut is so incredibly important whenever we're healing from trauma. Because if we cannot ingest food, if we cannot use our food as fuel to go about our lives and to gain energy, to gain happiness and fulfillment and satisfaction, to make our brain function better, to make our organs and our skin function better, we're not going to be able to go on that overall healing journey. If we're constantly struggling with constipation, diarrhea, acid reflux, ulcers, we're never even going to be able to get into that first step of actually living, because we won't be getting any fuel, we won't be getting any benefit to our overall internal systems. And we might not even be getting the enjoyment of just eating a yummy meal or eating a comforting meal, because we know it's going to turn our stomach, or it's going to make us nauseous, or it's just going to, make us feel uneasy. So that's the first thing, trying to heal your gut if you can. Ingesting prebiotics, probiotics, making sure you're having a well-rounded diet, that if you can, avoiding processed foods. One of my rules is that I love sweet things. It's a symptom of ADHD to use sugar as a fuel to get dopamine. So one of the rules that I made for myself was, rather to over ingest junk food or sweets, I would make them myself. And I would know that if I made them myself, then I wasn't over consuming, because then that means if I ate all the cookies in one sitting, then I was going to have to go into the kitchen and make a whole nother batch of cookies, which at the very base of my soul, I am a little bit lacking motivation to do things like that. So it forced me to pace myself. And I really liked it too, because I knew every single ingredient that was going into them as well. And it made me feel good. I was getting work. I was getting satisfaction from completing a task. And I was getting fulfillment from doing something good for my body. Another thing that is wonderful for your body is doing your best to lower your cortisol, which is our stress hormone. And some easy ways that we elevate our cortisol without even thinking about it, because this is something that almost all of us do, at least, maybe once per week, if not more, is having coffee on an empty stomach. And I hate to tell you guys this, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if you are drinking caffeine in any form, whether that's tea, coffee, those energy drinks, if you were ingesting that on an empty stomach, you are spiking your cortisol production for the day. And the reason you're doing that is because caffeine is a stimulant. So you're internally telling your body, hey, it's time to get up, it's time to work, it's time to get ready, boost those energy levels. But you haven't ingested any fuel to do that. You haven't ingested any food. So it's going to start drawing from places that you do not want it to draw from. And it's going to start raising that heart rate and raising that breath rate. Same thing for exercising on an empty stomach. You're putting your body under stress, which is what exercising is. It's a beneficial form of stress. But again, if you're not giving yourself that fuel, you're just spiking that cortisol and not giving it any way to come back down in a healthy way. So those are kind of two easy things to avoid. And again, sending out those Google searches of easy ways to lower your cortisol, great place to start. And to really combat that overactive nervous system that comes following a traumatic event, there's some really wonderful research that is around shaking and bouncing. And whenever I say that, I mean quite literally like jumping up and down and shaking out your arms, shaking out your legs, dancing around. And what this is doing is that it's regulating your nervous system function. And this will be one of those first links that I'm going to go ahead and throw into the chat. And this is just a nice, easy article that I found that kind of goes into why it's beneficial and additionally how we can do that at home. So popping that in, fingers crossed that sends now. Great, awesome. It goes into who developed this technique, ways that you can do it at home, why it's beneficial, and again, some stretches that you can incorporate to help out with that. Another one that I personally practice and has been truly life-changing for me has been yoga. And again, we have to be considerate whenever we are having conversations surrounding yoga. And I'll get back into this in the spiritual element of our talk. But yoga was originally, and it should still be respected as a spiritual practice. This was something that has been developed over many, many years, and we as a Western society have co-opted it. I would say slightly, but we've really heavily co-opted it, to be quite honest. And we've taken out some of the spiritual importance of it. We're using it for superficial benefits of like, I want to be skinny, I want to be toned. And I'm like, hey, if that's for your overall health, wonderful. I want your body to be functioning well. That's great. But there's the meditative aspect of yoga as well. And what I personally practice is yin yoga, which is sitting in positions for a long, extended amount of time. If you can, at least for me, 3 to even 10 minutes if I'm having a particularly long practice. And this shows me a couple of things about why it's beneficial, but what I've observed is feeling comfortable sitting in discomfort. If we can get comfortable putting our body in a little bit of discomfort, it shouldn't be pain, it shouldn't be sharp pain, but if we can get comfortable sitting with a good deep stretch that is helping our body, we're calming down that amygdala's response. Just because we're having some discomfort doesn't mean that there is an imminent danger. It doesn't mean that our body needs to immediately tense up and get ready to act, or get ready to fight, or get ready to flee. We can just be experiencing something a little bit that's uncomfortable, but we can practice breathing through it. And that is a lesson that will take you farther than anything else. To be able to manage that daily stress following trauma is a skill that may take weeks, if not months and years to learn, but it is an essential one. And starting with yin yoga or a similar practice is a wonderful way to begin experiencing that daily stress and training your body to not immediately go into the fight or flight response. And additionally, linking into that, we have, as many trauma survivors are familiar with, the concept of safe touch. If your body has ever been violated or touched or abused, and you have experienced anything that was unsafe or felt like a violation, there may be certain areas of your body that simply don't feel safe. And so getting back into a rhythm of reclaiming your body for the divine and beautiful place that it is, that only belongs to you, that is a wonderful practice to start. A truly wonderful and revolutionary one. And again, I know that for so many of us, it's a weird one. You're like, oh God, this is like, it's uncomfortable, and or there I feel weird. But like, even just starting with getting used to looking at your body, getting used to putting lotion on, having self-care, massage. Massage is a wonderful way. If you find someone who you trust, you might look for someone who is a man, a woman, someone who's non-binary, transgender, someone who you feel safe with, to begin massage. It can really remind your body that it can be soothing to be touched by another human being. That in fact, it really kickstarts our endorphins and makes us feel belonging, makes us feel intimacy. And those are things that are sorely lacking after we go through a traumatic event. And again, that kind of leads us into our next topic, which is that emotional element. One of the best ways that you can begin to honor your emotions in this holistic journey is to simply validate your experience. Whatever it was, someone somewhere has asked you questions or tried to insinuate maybe that it wasn't as bad as you make it out to be, or other people make it out to be. Maybe you've gotten the horrible comments of, you're just being dramatic, or you just feel that way because of X, Y, and Z. Those people can go fuck themselves. It's my therapeutic advice. No. Those people have never lived in your shoes. Those people did not go through what you went through. You are the only person who experienced that. And by that very nature, you are the only one who is allowed to make determining statements about your experience. If you begin to invalidate yourself, you are giving other people permission to do the same. Particularly if you're saying those words outside, out loud. But if you're doing it internally as well, that inner monologue of, it wasn't that bad, I can get past it, I'm fine, it's okay. Your body's trying to tell you that it's not. those tears that well up whenever you think or experience certain things, the way that your chest tightens whenever you see that person or even a picture of them. That's your body telling you that it's not fine, that it isn't okay, and that it wasn't okay, and that you still have some healing to do. So validate yourself. You're the first person who should. But if you have someone else in your life who has begun that journey to validate you, try to listen to them. Try to understand that they're trying to help you see that you deserve to be validated, that you deserve to be loved, and your experience deserves respect. And a way that we can begin to validate ourselves in a safe way, one of the great ones, is by journaling. And I know that that concept has been used in psychotherapy and in mental health spaces for many, many years, but I'm going to talk about it from a slightly different perspective, and I'm going to use some neuroscience that we used in our masterclass that we had with Denard a couple weeks back. Or sorry, God, that was last week. Time, guys. I don't have a solid perception of it. I certainly don't. But using the amygdala, which is our alarm bell, we have our hippocampus, which is our center for memory and emotion, and we have our prefrontal cortex, which is used for logic and rationale. By journaling, we are allowing ourselves to revisit the traumatic event or traumatic events and our emotions in a safe way. So, for example, we begin to be journaling about the car accident that happened, and just by thinking about the car accident, we've triggered that alarm bell. That alarm bell is our amygdala, and the amygdala is telling the hippocampus, all right, it's time to freak out. It's time to get ready. It's time to get ready to have that flashback or to raise those heart rates or remind this person of those memories. But by holding that pen, by touching that paper, you're grounding yourself in reality. And as you begin to write, you're engaging your prefrontal cortex. You're giving your body a way to know that it is safe. That just by thinking about these things doesn't mean that you are necessarily reliving them or that your body is in immediate danger. So the next time that you think about journaling, know that it is backed by neuroscience and your brain will thank you for it. And again, to talk about emotions, circles, support groups, in person, online, that is a wonderful way to not only validate your experiences, but to grow, to listen to other people's, to extend it so far as to validate their experiences and pay that kindness and that consideration forward. It's why these spaces are so, so important during healing journeys. And if you can, I highly suggest to think about, at least experiencing them in person, because it really is spiritual whenever you can sit in a room and know that you are safe with other survivors. It's a spiritual experience to feel the emotion and energy as you hear someone retell a story that was so similar to yours. You feel the emotions and the tears begin to well up, but it's not because it's pain for you or sadness for you. It's you looking at another version of yourself. It's you looking at that version of yourself who is breaking down and crying, and you can finally give your permission to your inner child, to your inner person, to break down and cry right along with them and know that they are not alone and you are not alone. I've been in those rooms whenever it happens, and it is by far one of the most beautiful things that I think that we as humans can experience, is to have those shared emotional bonds. Truly beautiful. So I'll go into a little bit of some psychological techniques that can help, and again, finishing with some historical ones, but really focusing in heavily on those novel ones too. So EMDR, it was developed in the 90s, early 90s, and EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And so how EMDR works is that, guided by a professional, whoever they are, as long as they've had the training, we encourage the clients to focus briefly on that traumatic memory. But at the same time, we're distracting their brain by using bilateral stimulation. So most often that is getting your eyes to track a moving light left to right. It can also be button pushing. Some people use a variety of different techniques, but the main thing is that you have your memory and you have your alternate source of stimulation. And what that does by distracting your brain in a way is it lowers the vividness and the emotional response that you have. Again, reminding your brain that it does have the capacity to experience these things without going into that heightened, aroused state. CBT and DBT, another two wonderful techniques. Cognitive behavioral therapy is your traditional talk therapy. DBT is dialectical, and dialectical in this case, it means that you are effectively focusing on two things that can be true. It's focusing on how you interact with the world, how you interact with yourself, rather than necessarily only focusing on your cognitive thoughts or your cognitive experiences. And so an example of that can look like accepting yourself and changing your behavior. If you're changing your behavior, well, you're not really accepting yourself. But DBT says that those two truths can exist at once. It allows you to move away from black and white thinking and to view yourself as a whole. Very, very powerful. Something that is more recent, well, recently legal, I should say, because it started in the 60s and the 70s, but is psychedelics, particularly for people who have PTSD or CPTSD. Most recently, we have been using ketamine, psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms, cannabinoids, every now and again LSD, but we have to be very, very, very careful with that because it has an intense psychoactive component. But I found a really, really wonderful psychedelic study, which again, I will share the link to that in the chat. But if you are curious about it, I really encourage you to check it out and read it. There are many, many states who are facilitating both ketamine and psilocybin studies. And for trauma survivors, it has been absolutely life-changing for some people. People who have been struggling with chronic depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. The hope is, because schizophrenia is rare, that we are using it in clinical trials because, again, it's dealing with a element of a disorder that can have manifestations, whether that is visual or auditory. And again, if you have ever consumed these drugs, then you know that you can also have that visual and auditory hallucinations. So the research isn't quite there, but we're getting close. And that's why I wanted to talk about it, is that it's not just trauma. It can be used for depression, it can be used for anxiety, but again, we have to have the larger conversation, which is how do we as a society change our outlook on what drugs are good and what drugs are bad? Should we continually punish people for being addicted to something, but not give them the resources to heal themselves? It's a philosophical question. I'm sure many of you can guess my thoughts on it, but I won't go too much into it. We'll hop over into our social section now, which can go into how we can socially heal from trauma, and that can be with friends, with family, work, relationships, the people that you have your hobbies with. But your social sphere can also be prison systems. It can be rehabs. It can be domestic violence shelters. It can be your overall environment, wherever that environment is that you interact with another human being. Socializing, too, it can happen with animals. Sometimes living beings can have such a profound effect on our healing journey. But not all of us are ready to do that with human beings at the very beginning. Sometimes we just have to be able to feel safe with that dog, that cat, that horse, because human beings have been proven to us that they are aggressive, they are unsafe, they are cruel. But our childhood dog or our beloved pet, they've always been safe. They've always been a consistent source of love and comfort. And so sometimes we need to begin our healing journey at the very baby steps of just finding comfort within another living being's presence. And that kind of ties me into our spiritual aspect of things. And this, again, as I said, it's a newer one for me in the last decade or so, but it is one that I have deeply come to admire, respect, and just advocate for. And for so many of us, spirituality, and I use that term intentionally, it means so many different things. And for me, spirituality simply is looking and being open to the deeper meaning in all things. For some of us, that may look like communing with the Christian God. For some of us, that may look like communing with nature. For some of us, that may look like a polytheistic religion of many gods and many deities. In my eyes, spirituality should encompass all of those things. It should not include any individual or any country or any culture's beliefs, because in my eyes, and this is just my personal philosophy, we are all feeling the same thing. We're all feeling this otherworldly spiritual pull, that there's something more than just this existence here on earth. And I don't ever want to say that we should be looking for who's right and who's wrong. We should just acknowledge that we all feel that spiritual pull. For me, I feel it in the ocean and in large bodies of water. I feel it in the forests and the moss-covered trees of Ireland, where I spent the last 7 years of my life. I've seen people commune with nature and with God, or with spirit, as many people say, in in the most unexpected of environments, and yet they are having profound experiences. And the reason I bring it up is, yes, it's important for the holistic conversation, but more than that, individuals who know trauma, who have experienced it, who have survived it, who are attempting desperately to survive it, they already know a lot more about what the universe and what human beings can throw at us versus others who haven't experienced those things. And as me and Denard were speaking following our last masterclass of the potential for people who experience childhood trauma, is that we may find those deeper connections earlier in life because we needed them. We needed them more because we had already found out just how cruel that the world could be, just how painful the world could be. But that also means that our passion and our drive can sometimes take us further than the people who haven't experienced those things. For me and for my experience, and why I focus so heavily on advocacy and destigmatizing and normalizing mental health and childhood trauma, is that in my family, we had a very patriarchal society, and this patriarch sexually abused many members of my family. And so I watched as these beautiful, beautiful children tell their stories as adults, but as children, they weren't believed. And so they ended up growing up with this very, very, very sad view of the world and of themselves. Or they did their very best to just shove it away and shove it down. But this all happened before my time. I didn't know about it. I didn't know any of it until it came out that he had repeated that behavior with a younger generation. And so again, we as a family suffered through that. We suffered through that experience. And he's in prison now, exactly where he should be. But we had to realize that we would never let that happen again. Never. And so, where other people may choose to work with childhood trauma, yes, out of the wonderful goodness of their hearts. For me, I look at the faces of the women in my family who were hurt by this man, and I know that my devotion to this field will never falter. That I have a truly intergenerational drive inside of my body to continue this work and to continue this advocacy and to scream it from the rooftops that we need to discuss this with children of all ages and with people of all ages. Because I have an innate reason why it matters to me. And that person who may have done that very same thing but didn't have those traumatic experiences as I did, whenever things get hard and whenever they get painful, they might not have that innate intergenerational reason. And so it might just get too hard for them, and that's okay. It doesn't make me better than or them less than, or vice versa. It just means that I was able to use my experiences to push a little bit farther. And that's what I hope for everyone who is a survivor of trauma, who knows a survivor of trauma, is that yes, it is painful, it is difficult, but you are capable of so much more than you know. So much more. And with that, I've talked quite a lot, I know, but and then again, please be mindful of your time, Denard, but I will still devote 20 minutes and 30 minutes to questions. But I didn't want to cut any of that short because, again, it is, I think, important that we discuss it. So Thank you so much for your kindness and for your patience with me, guys. I tried to keep it as succinct as I could, but I'm absolutely ready for questions now, so please throw them my way.
Amazing, Bella. And no worries, Bella. You don't need to put any disclaimers. We're all on board with you. So for I would say, and you all, so you heard it from Bella. I'm just repeating it. We're opening the floor for the first 20 minutes. Wherever your questions are, just place them in the chat. Bella, Kona said multiple people talked about the poem. Forgot it. I couldn't capture it. So if you can give the title of the poem in reference to the stars, I'll capture it in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also had a question, I believe it was from Alyssa, that I tried to capture in the chat as well. And then you have hands. So the floor is yours.
Perfect. So that line of poetry was, I have loved the stars too fondly to be fearful of the night. And I'll have a look at
Got it.
the questions. Thank you so much for that help, Denard. So Alicia says, do those therapies still work if any of these other drugs were abused or taken recreationally? So I'm going to assume that, Alicia, that you were talking about these psychedelic therapies. And absolutely, they can still work. But the main thing that scientists and the people who are delivering these therapies, they will make sure that you have gone through a very long period away from your active addiction. And again, they will be asking those questions. So if you are someone who recreationally used ketamine or you recreationally use psilocybin, they'll ask about it. And you should be ready for those questions. So they'll usually ask something along the lines of, have you ever been addicted to this substance? When was the last time you used it? What were the situations in which you used it? How long was the use? And what they're trying to gauge is not necessarily, is this going to work? Is this going to be effective? Yes, they're trying to make sure of that, but they can't predict that. They can't know how your brain and your body is going to react. What they're trying to help, though, and what they're trying to be conscious of is, we don't want these psychedelic therapies to be a way to facilitate addiction. And so they are very, very, very cautious. And so often you can either sign up for clinical trials or research studies, or you can have someone who can recommend you to these studies. So maybe a psychiatrist, I don't know if primary care physicians, but I would imagine they can at least give you information, or your mental health counselor or therapist can provide you with those as well. So if you have used them in the past, it does not immediately exclude you from using them now. However, do be ready to discuss it and to be honest about it, because again, these people aren't trying to punish previous drug users. What they're trying to do is make sure that they aren't encouraging periods of active addiction or starting them where they didn't occur before. So I hope that helps. And Lisa, I see your hand. Please go for it.
Hey, Bella, that was really, really informative. I recently, it's come up again in my life, this CSA. And I'm not ready to look at it yet. I'm not emotionally ready because I'm dealing with so much other stuff that I need to go through and finish and heal from. So I was wondering, I mean, I'm older, and I'm wondering, does it matter to hold off? Because I feel like it's a can of worms, and it's just going to keep coming. And I'm I feel a little overwhelmed as it is, and I can't imagine going into that.
I totally get where you're coming from, Lisa. And you remind me again of one of my family members who definitely can relate to your statement. But what I would say is that, one, honor your boundaries, and you've communicated those like, hey, I'm just not ready, because piling CSA on top of an already heavily piled plate, because I know your story well, Lisa. How I would approach that, if you were seeing me one-on-one and we talked about that happening, but you were like, I'm just not ready to get into it, I would be like, okay, well, we know that there's hurt there. We know that there's inner pain on the part of the child who went through that, of the adult whose life and actions could be shaped by that. And so if we're not ready to dive into that can of worms, I would focus on the good. I would focus and think about how you can positively experience your inner child again. How you can encourage them to have happiness, to have fulfillment, and to slowly begin to heal them. And not by facing the trauma head on, but by saying, hey, you know what? Whenever this period of my life was going on, I didn't get to take that ballet class. I didn't get to take that art class or that whatever class that I really wanted to. I didn't get to draw. I didn't get to paint. I didn't get to do all of those fun things that my other friends were doing. There was this Barbie that I really wanted. There was this video game, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But to think
Well,
about how you can give those things to them and to begin to heal their experiences as well as your own.
I found something, and I'm doing it every day, and it's playing in the dirt, and
Yeah.
it's my childlike joy. So
Perfect.
I'm feeding her. I'm giving her love.
And that right there, and I saw your beautiful picture with your gardener's hands, by the way. One, there's a huge basis in neuroscience for grounding, and specifically for literally ground, in the dirt, in the earth. Huge benefit to that. But secondarily, finding that joy, finding those things, you're not really holding it off. You're not really pushing it away. You're not really opening that can of worms, because you are feeding her, as you said. You are thinking of her. You're not pushing her away anymore. You're honoring her in the way that you can. And so I think you're doing exactly perfect, because if you were pushing her away, you would be trying to remove all things about your childhood experience. You wouldn't be trying to do those things. So, what you're doing now, just because you're not ready to dive into the hard parts yet, you are still doing a wonderful job, Lisa. And it's better than trying to shove it all away or pretend like that inner child isn't worth knowing and loving, because she is. And I'm going to check the chat to see if we have.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, Lisa, of course. And thank you for your question. So Kimmy, let's see here. Actually, I'm trying to make sure I'm not missing any. Okay, so Kimmy says, thoughts on Akashic recordings, energy healers, and anything like that. Crystals, music. My data-driven mind is trying to be open. I feel you, Kimmy. I really do. I really do. I am as I would say before, data-driven, logical, irrational. And for me, I still have those things in abundance. It's why I love research and neuroscience and looking at brain scans of people who have trauma as opposed to those who do not, and going into the really interesting semantics of why humans use the words that we use. But again, I tried to remember whenever I was younger that there was that magic that I wanted to believe in. And whether you wanted to call it magic or spiritual experiences, energy work, again, it is those same things, whatever religion or culture that you come from, whether it is crystal healing or acupuncture or rechanneling energy like Reiki or chakras. In my eyes, we're all talking about the same thing, which is that deeper pull from that spiritual source, whatever it may be. We all knew that intimately well as children. We were so close to it after being born. But again, as we moved through life, as we experienced trauma and pain and grief, we forgot. We were settled so much into reality. And so I don't know about you, Kimmy, but I did believe in that magic, as I said. No matter what that magic looked like for some of us, by the way. We all have probably experienced it differently. But I tried to remind myself of where I found magic whenever I was young. And for me, as it always has been, it's in the company of animals. There was this unspoken understanding and belonging with horses and with cats and with dogs, and the majesty of going to the zoo and seeing these lions and these elephants and these giraffes, things that defied explanation, that if we tried to describe it to someone who wasn't familiar with our world, that they would think it was this fantastical creature. I find the beauty in that. I find the beauty in loved ones who visit us in our dreams, or we have spiritual experiences and echoes of people that we simply can't explain. Researching past lives and hearing children who are 3 years old give detailed accounts of their great-grandfather's experiences, things that they would have absolutely no idea and no way of knowing. And so for me, Kimmy, those points can still be data. And that's what I kind of have aligned myself with, is that I'm like, wow, from every corner of the world, from every culture, from every race, from every religion, from every possible demographic, we are finding these similar stories. So for me, I find the ones that heal me the most. Some person here in the West might say that I'm absolutely cuckoo bananas for believing in the power of yin yoga, but for me, it has worked. The best form of therapy, the best diet, the best exercise routine, the best religion is the one that works for you. So I encourage you to try them. I encourage you to try past life regression. I encourage you to try the power of healing through crystals and through Reiki. Find the meaning where you naturally want to find meaning. And again, use those points of data to tell yourself that, hey, it's working for me, and I'm not going to question at this moment why it's working. I'm just going to accept the fact that it feels good and I'm working. And hey, once you accept that it is working, then you can go into the data and the data-driven and logical and rational side of why it's working. Sometimes it's soothing to know, and sometimes it's soothing to leave it as an unknown, in my opinion. So thank you for that question, Kimmy. And Jay, I see your hand. Please go for it.
Hi, I'm just wondering, is it possible that perhaps there are some traumas that you cannot heal from? Because I'm actually having some physical reactions at this point to my situation of losing my partner. As like my heart. I'm very, very extremely sensitive. I've had other different situations and traumas in my life as well. And like my heart just literally cannot take anymore. It cannot take any more just pain or negativity from other people, that just always seems to come up, throughout my life. It's just my heart is just not able to take anymore. And I'm just wondering, like, is it possible? Because my trauma, the biggest one of all, was my partner who's now dead and in heaven. So I'm just wondering, like, is it okay to say that, like, I'm not going to heal from that? I really don't think I am, because today, I mean, I do everything that I can do to heal, and I do, for me, it's, I have God, and that's a comfort in ways, but I really do need him. The fact that I'm separated from him and having this, on a daily basis and living here, it's constant. Like, it might go away a little bit, but it always comes back. I can't really say that that is healable. Like, how in the world is that actually healable? Unless I'm to be with him again.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking, Miss J. And again, I think that this is a really, really important to talk about, because whenever we talk about healing, and this is a good thing to discuss, because we all understand that word differently, much in the same way that we all understand trauma differently. In my eyes, whenever we experience a traumatic event, we are, as human beings, fundamentally changed. For some of us, we may be physically changed, we may be mentally changed, we may be emotionally changed. And very often, whenever we think about our healing journeys, we phrase it in the way of, I just want to get back to how I was before. I just want to be the person that I was before.
I don't want to be the person that I was before. I really
good. That's
yeah,
good.
I don't
That's
at
good.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't. I just miss my partner and love him,
Mm-hmm.
and he's no longer here. So I'm just getting frustrated at this point, because I've been doing all of this. I've been on this journey. I've been, coming here too. I've been even doing things. I'm sort of feeling like I'm at a point where it's just like, no, I mean, this is what it is. And, like, I just don't understand how can you heal from that? Like, his physical body is gone. Like, that's just, it's doesn't make any sense. Like, how could, it's like, I mean, that's just so terrible. Like, his physical body was beautiful. It was so beautiful. It was like, it's just, I can't understand it. I mean, how can that actually be okay? I really value human life, physical human life. Especially his, I valued that. It means something. His physical body meant something. It was beautiful. It was, how can it be no longer? It's like, to me, it's like, that's not healable, because that is an injustice. And I understand there's something beyond this, but like, I can't see it. So the only thing I can see is that his beautiful gorgeous body and voice and face is no longer. It's dead. Like, and I just can't, to me, like, that's just not okay. That's a huge injustice to me. I even feel like to say to God, because I believe in God and all of that too, but how could you expect me to be okay with this? And maybe God does not want me to be okay with this. Maybe he wants me to be like this, just like to say this is not okay. Human life is precious. And the fact that they die is not really healable. It's bad.
I agree deeply that human life is precious, Jay. I really do. I think in my eyes, all life is precious. But for me, and I'll offer perhaps a different philosophy, not that this is right or you are right or I am wrong or you are wrong, but for me, I've been in your shoes. I haven't had the experience of losing my lifelong partner and the father of my children, but I have lost many, many, many people in my life. And for me, how I have coped with that loss is that I deeply value the time that each one of us has on this earth. And for me personally, I feel that life is more valuable because it is finite. And I know that again, that might sound counterintuitive, or you're like, well, that means that we're all supposed to die. I don't think that we're all supposed to die, but I think it's a fact that through evolution or through creation or whatever you believe, is that all things change energy. And yes, that physical body can go to a different place, but the reason that it holds so much value is that he was unique. He was a unique presence on this world that will never be repeated again. And yet, he was so special and lucky enough to cross your path. In the billions of people that are in this world, you found each other and you were lucky enough, you were blessed enough to know him during this time, and he was lucky enough to know you. And
yeah, I don't think I can heal from it. I've been through a lot in my life, a lot, and trauma, and I've been so strong, and I healed from everything, and I really was strong, but I don't think I can heal from this. This is the one thing I can't, I just have to, try and carry out my days, accepting that I won't be able to heal. Because you're right, he was, of all the billions, he was the one special one for me. And I miss him so much. Thank you so much for listening.
of course, Jay, of course, and thank you for sharing. And I'll offer one more thing on this topic for Jay, for you, for everyone. Again, this is just my personal philosophy, but I do think it's a little bit comforting, and I hope it at least offers just a modicum, a grain of comfort, is that healing doesn't mean that it removes the pain. Unfortunately, whenever we heal, that healing can simply be finding the strength to move on, but not move on from the people that we lost, or to forget them, or to not feel their loss deeply within our heart every single day, but to choose to carry it with us and to choose to honor them and to honor their precious finite life as much as we can, and to focus on the good that they did while they were here. And Jay, I know your story. The little that I know of it, I know that you have a beautiful, beautiful family in the form of your children. And they are here because of that beautiful love between you two. He still exists whenever you look at your son. He is so blessed to have grown up and created a child. And that is his footprint. To heal is to feel that pain, but to know that he does still exist in some ways, and that whether it is the most difficult loss that we know that we will never truly heal in the way that broken things can come back together immaculately as they were before, but that we can find the strength to carry on, knowing that it was a blessing to know them, and it was a blessing to have their footprint left on this world that we still get to experience every day in the form of children. And if you didn't have children, then you have the memories, you have the photos, you have the videos. Maybe they did charitable works, maybe they built you something. They left echoes of them all over the world. With every breath that they took, with every step, with every person that they spoke to, they left little echoes of their existence on this planet. And so they're not gone totally, because if they were gone totally, they would disappear like memories being erased from a flash drive. And yet we still feel their presence. We can still look at those photos and those videos and remember that they were here. And it is an irreplaceable loss to the universe. But it was so precious and so valuable because it was fleeting. And I personally feel that whenever we think about higher powers and whenever we think about gods and deities, goddesses, is that the lesson that they try to teach us, that they try to show us, is that, hey, I've given you many different stages of your life in this universe. One was starting out as carbon and nitrogen and oxygen. And then you slowly grew from an egg that was fertilized by sperm and grown inside of a uterus. And then you changed form. You slowly began to accumulate cells, and you had a different meaning of what life was. You grew and grew in this warm, safe, gravity-free environment until you came bursting out into the world, and that was a new form of life. You could see things with your eyes, you could smell things and experience the wonderful senses around us. You found everything that you could possibly find here on this plane of existence, on Earth, in this three-dimensional reality. And then I gave you another way to experience what the universe is, which is whenever we pass from this physical body. And for many of us, we think that there is something on the other side. We may not know exactly what it is. But again, those little data points, there are so many stories and so many accounts over the thousands of years of human history that the ones that we lose, they're still here. They can still give us wisdom in the form of dreams and visions. They can sometimes give us smells and sensations. And that tells me that they are here in a sense, that they might be closer than we could possibly perceive, but we're just still here living in this plane of existence. We just can't know them yet, because if we were to know them, it would mean that we were ready to leave our physical bodies. And none of us know when that day is. We never can. It's not our reason or our role to know those answers. But one day you will have that answer, Jay. We all will.
Thank you.
Of course, Jay. And yeah, I hope too that way of thinking isn't excluding to anyone. I hope that it's as inclusive as it can possibly be, because I really, really do feel that all religions, all spiritualities, all philosophies and ways of thinking is that we are all trying to find the same thing. We're all trying to find answers on things that we just can't find the answers to in this existence, but we're going to try, and we're going to try to commune with the deeper energy that we all feel for as long as we can, until we have those answers in the next phase of our existence. And I have been blessed to have watched a couple of people pass from this universe and experience them breathe their last breaths. And what a wonderful thing to be able to be with someone whenever they took their very last breath on this universe, and to know that you were able to honor them in that way, to honor their life, and to continue to honor their life by telling their stories, so that even the people who didn't know them the way that you did, who don't have the stories and the memories, that they still know that they were valuable and wonderful. So I thank you for bringing that up, Jay, and I thank you for allowing me to discuss that. And I hope that, again, I know that not everyone will agree with me. I know many of you certainly won't, but I hope that you take from this, more than anything, as a message of love. Love and understanding and empathy, that to live is to experience pain. To live is to experience loss. But to live and to keep living is to know love, is to know joy, to know pleasure, to know happiness, to know that life is this beautiful, crazy spectrum of thoughts and actions and feelings, and that we should try to live it for as long as we can. But we shouldn't be fearful of the end, because it's not really an end. It's just a transition. So I think that is that might be all of my pearls of wisdom. Dinar, do you have anything?
No, I just want to, just for a moment, if we can, if you all can join me. Um, this is not a birthday, but it is a day of birth where, and even the words that you just shared here, I think is very impacting, to hear, to, to know, like there's a blossoming beyond like loss, and love actually embraces that type of light, and it defies the suffering, but it embraces it at the same time, like the notion of becoming keenly aware of your shadow, right? in the sunlight while also being aware of the shade. I want to just take a moment because there was a lot that was shared, but in this space, I'm going to ask you all to actively engage with me, and this is self-select work. Um, you all know Bella. You have known the content, the expertise, but I just want you to lean into your body sensations in this moment. All that was shared. We're gonna do this and embrace that love. We're also gonna embrace the suffering, right? We're gonna embrace the information, and I'm going to ask you just to celebrate this experience, this human experience where we shared space, and honor also Bella in her life and those that shared in this space with an emoji of your choice. An emoji of your choice. Um, Lean into that body sensation. I'm going to do the same. And I not ask that Bella in this moment know that we are expressing our love. And also some like Lisa, she was saddened knowing that she had to go. So there was a sense of loss and grief. But for those that also know, there's a moment where you will find this same place on Spotify and YouTube. But let's just take this next moment. Let's embrace, let's love, let's honor. I'm starting now. You can use more than one too. Oh, I had to put a clown face, Bella. I love when you laugh at yourself. Well, we're
Uh,
gonna stop here. Bella, I don't have anything else. I don't think there's much to add. I'm just still processing, to be honest,
mm,
everything that was shared. There's so much that came up for me. Again, I'm glad that we're doing this. I'm glad that it's recorded
mm,
as well. And I guess for me, and I shared this with you, the one question I would have for you, right? You've shared. I'm talking about from the aspect of you. If you all haven't been on the YouTube, we're talking about from the basic foundation of what trauma is, how
mm,
to understand it. She's gone through physical, neurological, right? The changes, and you've also heard in different rooms she's talked about parenting, grief, and so let me ask you, in this experience as we close out, what has it done for your heart?
mm. What a wonderful question, Denard, and thank you so much for asking it.
No
Um,
problem.
you might hear in my voice, I have a lot of emotion in my voice right now, and it's because for me, I just feel so much gratitude to be able to discuss these things. I feel so much love and belonging and happiness to know that everything that we have all experienced in this crazy world, we are all in it together, and that there is a deep sense of belonging being a human in the world who has had adverse and challenging and traumatic experiences, and yet we find each other. We find each other, we appreciate each other, we know each other, and most of all, we love and accept each other. And what this has done for me has reaffirmed the the cold, angry, apathetic little girl that I once was, who was dead set on never ever opening her heart again because it was just too painful. Was that I made the right choice. I made the right choice to open my heart again, to trust people, to love people, to be appreciative of people in my life, and to not close myself off from aid and from support and from love, but to speak about it, to share my experiences, to listen to others, and to show them that I was there. I still am there sometimes, but more than anything, it gives me hope, Denard. Hope in abundance and love in abundance. And I thank you so much again for facilitating this conversation, for your many, many points here on Circles and outside of it. What a beautiful world this is. And all of us make it beautiful by our presence.
Did you all feel that? Did you feel that? Like, did you really feel all of that? I think I took my first breath today, you all. Um, and I just got to gift back these words as we close out. This is so, Bella, who created you? Like, you too beautiful. Let's this. Oh my goodness. Listen to this. I made the right choice to open my heart again, and we find each other. Yeah, yeah.
It's a wonderful thing whenever we can connect on mind, body, and spirit, Denard. And this is exactly what I was talking about whenever I think about in-person support rooms, but this space and many other rooms. I felt it in yours. I felt it in mine. But we are so capable of having those things from afar. We're so capable of being impacted by each other, by getting choked up and crying at people's stories, by laughing, by getting angry when things happen that we know was a travesty and shouldn't have happened. We have the power to connect deeply with each other. And I thank you so much for connecting deeply with me this evening. I truly see it as an honor, and I truly am grateful. So deeply grateful for every single one of you. Really, really, I am. And I will continue to do my very best to keep doing this work and to keep seeing and experiencing and loving all of you as we go through this crazy, crazy existence called life together. Because we're all worth it, and our scars make us beautiful. Thank you, guys.
Amen. I'm going to just leave the chat open a little bit because I don't know, Kimmy. I think we need to be like you in all these resources you dropped in the chat, but also in other words, we also listed a little bit of. I tried to capture the self-care strategies in regards to what Bella shared earlier. And remember, there was also, again, you all can go back and check out the recording, but there was so much shared here, like the aspect of the grounding, like grounding, professional support from EMDR, CBT, DBT, psychedelic assisted therapy. There was so much fruit that was given here, you all. I'm just hoping that you took some time to digest. And if you didn't, tell someone right now they missed out on three-fourths of their blessing, right? But tell them there's also still an opportunity to go out there once the Spotify or YouTube link is available. They can go out there and check it out. And then also, Kimmy pointed out there's also 2 rooms available. So if you want to continue the discussion in regards to healing, remember what was taught here, what you learned, what your body responded to, and practice that validation, that self-compassion. But ultimately, remember, Bella shared today, you made the right choice by showing up today. You made the right choice. Bella, I'm in honor of you. I had a chance to, and I'll just say this publicly before we close out, and shout out to Circles, because I also think this was a divinely orchestrated opportunity for me to be able to sit and hear your voice, hear you guide, and also see and hear more of your story. That's what I was thirsting for, because I also believe there's so much beauty in our stories. And to hear that you described, the word that you used was so strong, like the apathy. But as you spoke, I don't know if anyone else felt it. the empowerment in your words, that it shifted something in me, right? When you talk about shaking the body, your words was moving my body to a place of empowerment. It was a gentle walk, to be honest, but it was one that I shifted. I felt my shoulders raised a little bit. And so when you talked about that shift, that decision that you made, I recognized it was one done with your entire being. It was very intentional, right? And when you describe this aspect of just saying that you can't wane your desire to live out and speak on behalf of those that have been trespassed and transgressed with, especially knowing that in your family you see the faces. Um, I will tell you publicly, you will be in my prayers tonight. I want to make sure that you know you are prayed for and with in a way that I know that you are a unique soul. I know everyone is unique. I know everyone is different. But what we talked about privately, I'm gonna say publicly, you have shown us your scars. You have shown us your beauty. You've shown us where your heart was breaking for others, but there was just a speckle of this hidden lake of blessings, and I got to actually taste it. And so it's cool, man. I just hope that listen, I'll be honest, it reminds me of I don't know if you've ever heard this poem by I'm being talkative now because you activated me.
I love it.
Man,
I love it.
it just reminds I'm gonna see if I can find it, but I think it's lead by Mary Oliver. But
Mm.
when you get a chance to check it out, you honestly reminded me when you spoke of it. It just talks about like the beginning of a breaking of a heart, and it talks about this aspect of loons coming to a harbor, but at the end, it talks about like ensuring that that brokenness that opened up the heart allows it also to never close again to the rest of the world. And I think about you when you were sharing this empowerment, that shift that took place. And that's what I hope is that you never, that's actually what I'm going to be praying, by the way. My prayer is essentially that you never allow even the wickedness that exists in this world, but also the beauty that exists in the people that navigate some of the wickedness that exists in this world is like you. I just hope that you never allow that heart to close again to the rest of the world because you're needed. You know, you're needed.
Thank
Stop there.
you. Thank you, Denard. And again, I know we're coming up on time. We're past it. We're well past it. But again, I thank you so many, many times over for your thoughts and for your prayers, Denard. As much as I am a unique soul, you are a unique soul. I know how devoted to your family you are. I know how devoted to the people that you are helping. I know how devoted you are to your community. I know how devoted you are to your spiritual practice. And I thank you for bringing that unique and truly needed element of spirituality and deep empathy to this space. I
Girl,
really,
you
really
better
see you.
stop this thing recorded. I might take this little portion and just keep repeating it to myself before I go to sleep.
Look, this is the thing with deeply empathetic individuals, Denard. I'm overflowing in love and abundance, and I'm
I
emotional.
take it. I receive it. It's needed. It's needed. Man, I just hope you all see that the love is real. It's not a facade. It's not something you all know. I believe that it takes energy to be fake. And when we talk about rechanneling energy, I'm not going to rechannel energy towards flattery or like even complimenting the pompous pious sides of people. I think when we connect at a place that's genuine, you don't have to search for words. You just speak what you've seen, what you've heard, and ultimately what you felt. So I just hope that this experience is ultimately to tell you that there is more in the space that we exist in. But it's also up to you all to do what you continue to do. Show up for yourselves, trust yourselves with yourselves, right? And we're all on this milestone of life. There's a master class that's happening in the beauty of your journey. And I think Bella has given us words to that to remind us, right? We saw the crippling aspect of trying to decide and discuss what healing looks like, what injustice, what advocacy for oneself looks like. And Bella shared with us vividly. She said, I am living proof, I'm evidence of that journey. Right. That's what she shared. So I'm just hoping that you all can also lean into this space and know that this to me is what I would say in many different places is the argument of being alive, the argument of being alive. So may you all continue on your journey. And Bella, I want to shift it back to you. Any last thing that's coming up for you as we close out? And I'll leave the chat open for another minute, then I'll close it out. But again, thank you.
All that's coming up is preach it and amen, Denard.
Amen. Bye, lovely people. Thank you for
Yes.
hanging in.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Deeply seen and deeply appreciated. All right, guys, I'm going to head out. Denard, it's been a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for your help again. And I know we'll talk soon, so I won't say bye.
All right, cool.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
See you soon.